This is our third AI Masterclass with Dan Greenleaf and, of course, DJ Singley from Mapsys. Um, if you guys have been here for the first two, then you kind of know them a little bit. If not, I'm sure they'll let you know who they are. So I'll just kind of like maybe let them introduce themselves really quick.
Sure, I'm
Dan, you
Dan.
want to go?
Yep, I'm Dan Greenleaf. I am the CEO and founder of a group called AI Rising. We're focused on building the Midwest to be the tech hub of the future. So wonderful that the coast exists, and wonderful that you guys have been able to be the tech hub of the world to date. But we're trying to use AI as that disruptor to change that and join you guys at the table. In addition to that, I also joined Mapsys at the start of the year to help them grow their AI portfolio.
Good, good. Hey, folks, I'm DJ Singley. You've seen me here a few times. I'm Chief Technologist at Mapsys, and really excited to help you explore all the reasons why you do and don't want to do AI today with us. So glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, we are honored to have you here. So we asked decision makers, which of the following issues are you currently experiencing when it comes to your AI journey? And these are the responses that we got. As you can see, kind of the top three are lack of ongoing training, which we've kind of seen before. Misaligned project objectives and business goals, that is moving up a little bit from what we've seen. And poor data quality and inadequate data management. I know we've touched on that a couple of times, but I want to throw this over to Dan. First off, what do you think of these this data, and then what are you seeing? What are the most common AI planning pitfalls?
But I think this goes in line with what I'm seeing as I talk to customers. Training is a huge issue, and I think we can kind of tackle these one at a time. So when it comes to training, what I'm seeing is, folks just don't know how to use AI. And so a lot of times you have business users, end users who aren't even in tech, and they don't know that ChatGPT or Copilot's there or what it can do for them. But they're also wary to start playing with it because they don't know how secure it is. So what I suggest is, if it's for yourself, I love Coursera. There's another platform I love called what is it? Blanking on the name now. Learn prompting. That's it.
Hmm.
Um, and both of those give, free or really discounted courses in the AI space. And that's wonderful. But what I've also found, having been an agile coach and a scrum master and a agile trainer in the past, is if you tell people to go take this online class, they'll do what most of us do. And oh, dang it, I have to get it done tonight. I'm just going to click through, answer the questions, see what the right answers are, go back and answer them. Those big online platforms are great for your personal growth if that's what you're interested in, but they're probably not gonna be taken seriously by your team. So what I suggest is either, book an online trainer or book somebody to come in. And you don't need hours, you don't even need a full day, but just get somebody in for an hour, once a quarter to talk about different topics that are important to your business. So start with the basics. How do we use productivity increasing tools like ChatGPT, Copilot, Perplexity, etc.? Then next time come in and talk about some security concerns. Then next time come in and talk about how we can use it to analyze data. But, don't overwhelm people. Don't make it a huge heavy lift, but just incrementally add some resources and training throughout the year. So that's kind of my thoughts on training. I don't know, DJ, what your thoughts are there.
Yeah, I think you hit it. You hit the nail on the head, really. And when we first saw this, we were both kind of looking at each other like, man, that's a really good question, right? I mean, how which services should we sort of point folks to? I think I might take a slightly different tact, and that is when when Dan and I and the Mapsys team engages with a customer, we typically engage with a set of technologies, right? And we build something on those technologies. Well, when those technologies evolve, especially as fast as AI is evolving, like for instance, during our last webinar, we showed you the recent agentic AI updates to Watson X, IBM's Watson X. Well, it's really behooves us as technologists to go back into our customers and say, listen, your favorite tools have been updated, and it's time for you to take a look at the new capabilities for maybe your next project, or even to update the current projects you've just finished with some new features. So I think, really it comes down to, for me, when you partner deeply with an organization such as Mapsys, Dan and I, you're going to get some of that from us. And of course, what Dan has said, you should go out and seek it out yourself too, because this is a fascinating technology. But you're certainly going to get some of this from us as well. So, what do you think, Dan?
Yeah, absolutely agree. I mean, when you get into some of the more specific roles and learning to tune a large programming language or how to clean your data, and that's something, generally only a few people within your organization are going to need to know how to do. We absolutely enjoy teaching people that, uh,
Yeah.
teaching people those skills so they can, the proverbial teaching them to fish so they don't have to keep relying on us for dinner.
I think some of the coolest stuff that you and I do, Dan, are just talking to customers. Listen, folks, we talk to so many folks every single day about their demands, their needs, their wishes, and we have so many interesting stories, I think, about all whole slew of customers of where they are in their AI journey. And I think that's Gosh, we could do a webinar every week and just tell you the stories that we and all the things we learned last week from customers. Not telling anybody's name or what customer it was, right,
Yeah.
Dan? But we certainly have a lot of things to talk about. What do you think about the misaligned project objectives? I have a lot to say on that one. What do you think about that one?
I want to hear from you first on that one.
Okay, yeah, sure, sure. So I feel like when we start engaging with a customer and there are, we find that it's going to be a good project for us, right? Good project for the customer. Everything looks like this is um, a good thing for the customer, whatever it may be, right? There's going to be some amount of new AI application built at the customer, or a process or procedure that is enhanced by AI, right? When we get to that stage of the game, then it always comes into, well, how much is it going to cost? And that's where the misalignment, I think, sometimes can come in, right? Once you figure out what you want to do with AI, or what project you want to deploy AI in, you really need to stand back and have a hard look at the business objectives. What is the ROI of this project? Are you bringing in new revenue streams from this project? Are you making something easier on your staff that's actually going to save money? Can you quantify what that cost is, that cost savings that you're going to have? You need to have those discussions, because you'll never get to the next step. After we have a design thinking session, the idea is to go into proof of concept. But really, through the proof of concept, we're going to be showing you not only what the technology is capable of, right? We're going to show you what the cost is also going to be should you continue after the proof of concept. And, Dan and I have so far seen probably 95% of folks through a long haul proof of concept continue on. So, that's what I'm thinking, Dan. I know you have other thoughts too, or whatnot. What do you think?
I mean, I think the challenge is, and I've seen this time and time again, AI is a tool. And so think of it like a drill. When power drills first came on the scene back in the 50s, post World War II, they were an amazing tool that could do so many things. But even still today, when you're putting shingles on a roof, you're not using a drill because it's not the best tool for the job. And so a lot of people start with the idea, I want to use my drill. So I'm just going to go build a drill. I'm just going to use a tool to put on a roof because I have to put on a roof today and I want to use my drill. Not the best tool. And I think where people get misaligned is they're focusing on just using the tool that they have in their hand to fix the problem at hand. And I encourage people to zoom out and say, okay, what are my objectives as an organization, or what are all my projects coming up in this coming year? And then look at those projects and say, of these, which is this the right tool for? And just when Agile came on the scene back in the early aughts, it was an amazing tool for certain types of projects. And if you were using it to build a website or stand up a new consumer-facing product that wasn't heavily regulated, worked great. If you're trying to use it for a data center back in the early 2000s before Kanban was really on the scene, it was a struggle. No one had really figured that out yet. So out of the gate here early, I say look at all your projects and choose the few that make the most sense, or even just the one that makes the most sense to use that particular tool. And then move forward. And as you grow and learn to use it, then you'll use it for a more wider set of applications. But out of the gate, don't force that tool onto a specific project if it's not the right fit.
I think that's exactly the right message, Dan. Dan and I have had a couple of conversations recently with some customers, and after conversing for a little while, we realized maybe AI is not the right tool here. It's just the buzzword that you're hearing to solve a whole slew of problems. It's not the right tool for this particular, for this particular problem. So, yeah, I think you got it, man. Dan, the third one down, 18%, the poor data quality. You are a data guy, right? I know you could probably talk until you're blue in the face about this, but could you give us some idea of your reaction to this?
I think the challenge is people who are collecting the data don't understand the end use of the data. And so a lot of times you'll get, I'll get called into a situation where, hey, we've got, messy data, ugly data. We can't figure out how to pull the data out of our lake in the right way. And I go, well, what was the end goal with the data? How are you intending to use it? And they go, I don't know. We just were told to clean it up before other people could use it. So I think the secret to cleaning up your data is to start with the end users, start with the end products, and then go back and look at how you can cleanse the data you have. And ideally, in this world, we all know that things are changing fast. You got to keep that data growing and developing. So ideally, at least make it work going forward.
Yeah, that's good insight for sure. I would like to talk about the next one down, the understanding the complexity of AI model development, because I think this is a particularly interesting one, right? A lot of the projects that we're involved with right now are generally not either building an AI model from scratch or even taking a foundational model and enhancing it with customers' data. A lot of the ones we're doing right now are simply just using that foundational model, whatever it may be, right? Whether it's an IBM Granite model, a Slate model, a model from OpenAI, or any of the other models that you can get off a Hugging Face. It is simply just using that model with something called retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, to get at your data, which is stored in a vector store, and going that route. And I think we're mostly doing it because some of these projects that we're doing are, well, honestly, Dan, it seems like they're just getting their first project off the ground. We don't need to train a model. We just is not necessary for what we're doing. There's a whole host of problems that come once you start training models, meaning, models get stale. You need to have model pipelines and model lifetimes and all sorts of things like that that you need to track about all your models that you're using that are custom or retrained models. So, at least for the time being, I see a lot of folks just using those foundational models and going and building off of them with RAG and other tools to to deal with whatever they're dealing with. And as you saw the last webinar, right, we had generic AIs talking to very specific AIs to figure out problems, right? That's the whole idea of this agentic AI. I think that was a really good demo, and I'm look forward to when the agentic AI stuff from IBM, the Watson X stuff, ends up in production. I'm excited to use it, right? Dan and I don't get anything that's behind the covers. We have to wait until it's out for production use for everybody. But that's sort of my idea there. Dan, do you have any other thoughts on that?
I've talked to a lot of people who are trying to figure out how to build a model, and I think unless you're a cutting edge technology company, you probably don't need to build your own model.
Good
I mean,
point.
there are a lot of tools out there. I mean, just like with email, what would be the purpose of building your own email system? You're going to use Outlook or Google, right? Maybe one of the other several out there. But I think at the end of the day, the vast majority, I'd say practically 99% of our customers, they can either use an existing model right out of the box, or they can train that model and not build a new model, but just train the existing model. And that's actually a lot easier to do than most people think once you have the people in there with the skills to do it. So unless, like I said, unless you're cutting edge or unless you just enjoy this stuff, I wouldn't bother trying to build a model.
I agree 100%. I was just talking to a customer just the other day. Let me give you a quick story. I now I can't even remember who it was. Maybe it was you, Dan, that you and I were talking with this guy. Uh, This guy was basically building his own model and his own chatbot type of experience with an observability layer. He thought that was a very interesting thing. He's a data scientist. He has the two other folks behind him that do data science, and they were all enjoying building the model. And my immediate thought was, there's already products out there at a competitive price to help you with this type of thing. And I so often Dan and I talk about IBM technologies, right? We have a whole slew of other technologies we can bring to bear at all sorts of price points, depending what your problems are. And I immediately thought of another solution from one of our partners that was priced exactly where he needed to be. That had unlimited usage, which will absolutely be one of his problems when he gets it into production and 800 users are using it at scale. His AWS bill won't be $40. That's what he told me. He's like, "Oh, it's only taken me $40 to develop it." Yeah, but when you put that in production, you're going to be $40,000 deep a month with 800 users really, really using it. That's the problem. And the observability layer, as he touched on, well, there's, this particular product that I'm thinking of has an observability layer built in. So I feel like when you look at what your needs are, look out into the market, talk to experts like Dan and I to see, hey, is there something that's already out there? Is it built already? Should I just use that? Is there things about what is already built out there that are better than what I could, do now? And in this particular case, the unlimited usage is definitely going to save them money over time. Now, I could be wrong. Maybe they'll only use $1,000, $2,000 of computing a month, but Dan and I both know that is not what typically happens. It's once you start using it and you love it and you see what it can do, you're going to want to pay for more of it.
But even if they only use $1,000 or $2,000 a month, you took this really smart person who is probably highly compensated, and you had him spend hundreds of hours building out this model and all these services
Yes.
instead of working on other business problems, right? There's only so many hours in a day. And again, if you want to, if it's your hobby and you enjoy doing it, great, go for it. But otherwise, use your time more wisely.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right, Dan. Well, I
I
think the rest
think
are
that's
kind
the
of,
slide.
I
Yeah.
think that's the slide. Yeah, I think we could probably move on.
Awesome. Thank you. So moving on. Okay. So we asked the same decision makers, what are some of the main areas that you would like to improve with AI? Okay. So we got integrating AI with legacy systems, predictive analytics, data privacy and security, and finding skilled AI talent. So I think I'm going to bounce this one over to DJ. How often are AI goals realistic in today's planning?
Gosh, boy, we talked to so many people, and I feel like, as Dan touched on earlier, some of these people are like, "What's a chatbot? Should I use a chatbot? Can you sell me a chatbot?" No, go to ChatGPT, man. Come on, I just helped a patent attorney use ChatGPT to make his own GPTs to write in the same style that he writes his patents with. Yeah, and it wasn't exactly a sale for us in a large, high-powered application, but it was something useful for him. So at least on this very first bullet here with 30% integrating AI with legacy systems. Listen, almost all of the conversations that are out of the chatbot arena and the productivity enhancing arena are all dealing with integrating with current legacy systems, right? So they could be, let me give you another example. So this seems to be a very popular one with lots of different customers out there. And that is when whatever pricing structure or pricing tools they have in their company to help them understand how to make a project successful and price it competitively based on previous data, their own wins and previous losses, right? The ones they did not win because of the wrong architecture for the project or wrong price point, right? This is a very real tool that a lot of customers are deployed today, and every single one of them is right to suspect that an AI agent can help them within this tool to make it more accurate or to at least give it more interesting things to say to the sales rep to consider as they price their projects. So that is sort of a low-hanging fruit one, but it's one where you insert AI into an already known process or procedure, and you derive a lot of value out of that. I think that one really could ROI much faster than the typical AI projects. Dan, your thoughts? What do you think?
But I think for the most part, if your systems are built with any kind of modern architecture and not a monolith, finding an entry point, basic APIs. There's ways to do it. It's obviously going to depend on your use case, and criticality is a big one there, right? If I'm making decisions about um, a marketing email, if I want to customize a marketing email, if I want to look at a customer's previous history and see this woman has bought 7 blue tops and 3 black pairs of pants in the last year, maybe I don't want to send her an orange color ad. I want to send her a blue color. Um, that's great. We can do that. We can implement that very easily. If it messes up, oh well. On the other hand, if I'm trying to decide what kind of medication to give somebody or how to treat a cancer, we can give advice to the doctors, but we are nowhere near the point where we want the AI making the final decision. So I think integrating with your existing apps for most people is going to be fairly easy. And that's kind of going to be the least of your worries. The thing that you'll have to do is just provide the suggestion, kind of like when you're texting and it suggests your word, suggest words. It's great that we provide the suggestion, but until you've really matured your system, you still need that human to make that final decision.
Mm, yeah, good point. I like that. All right, well, let's move on to the next one. Predictive analytics. I got nothing. No, I'm kidding. Can you imagine if I said that? Dan, take it away. I'm never at a
I
loss
mean,
for
no, I mean, I love predictive analytics. I think it's fun, and you're talking about the project estimator tool. I've built similar things like that in the past, um, based on just using historical data, and you find people actually tend to be fairly consistent with their estimates. They're just fairly consistently wrong.
Yeah.
So the person who estimates 50% over most of the time continues to estimate 50% over and 50% under. And sometimes just taking that away from this human element and saying, hey, we put your system, your thoughts into this algorithm and how pops this. It gives people a number to work with. I think the challenge with predictive analytics is to know the weaknesses in AI. And one of the major weaknesses of AI is what we call black swan events. So really rare things. So for instance, COVID was a black swan event. And if you're trying to use AI to predict what was going to happen right at the beginning of COVID in March 2020, it had no idea because the previous data didn't apply to the future. It would look at the previous 6 months or previous 3 years or whatever it was and say, this is what I think it'll be next month. And you're looking at it going, I had to close all the stores of my company. We're not going to sell any clothes this month. Like that's a bad estimate. So I think predictive analytics is great in giving a tool to people and to giving suggestions. But again, the decision makers still need to understand some of the weaknesses and be aware that when black swan events or when things completely outside of the normal data set happen, that they probably won't be useful.
Yeah, that's a good point. When I think about this, I more think about, a lot of customers have analytics package already deployed, whether they're from Microsoft or IBM SPSS, Cognos, things like that. And those largely will give you, a whole slew of reports and analytics and all sorts of things. So what is it the AI is doing that is, up above and beyond? Well, potentially a lot. I just had a conversation with a customer again, and they wanted to use chatbots for predictive analytics. I think I talked them off the ledge back to just regular deep learning, machine learning, but I feel at least in that particular realm that particular customer had enough analytics throughout their company, that they're getting the answers in other tools that just haven't looked at them, right? So I don't know. Predictive analytics is, I think you hit the nail on the head with your comments. And I think it's certainly something that a lot of folks out there are looking at. So that's why it's at 24%. Oh. But moving on to the data
Yeah.
privacy, 18%, right? I think this is something, Dan, I could be wrong, but I feel like it's been coming up in the rankings over the last year and a half when people think about this stuff. And when I think about data privacy and security, that really comes to the AI general concept of governance, right? How are we going to govern this AI model so it's not leaking data or users aren't trying to steal data from the model, and that's where your privacy and security frameworks come in. Again, IBM has a great governance tool, But I don't want to say that IBM has the only governance tool. There's many, many new startups out there or early term companies that have great governance tools that look pretty promising. Although I will say the IBM governance tool is particularly all-inclusive, right? Which is neat. It can you can use it with Copilot if you wanted to, which is one of the reasons why I like to talk about it, right? Some of these other tools are very, very specific to this particular AI platform or this other AI platform, not the IBM one. But I'm curious your thoughts on the data privacy and security.
Yeah, I think, one of the major concerns I'm hearing from a lot of more business focused and more security oriented people is just how do I make sure that whatever data we're putting in these models is actually secure and it's not going to be shared with our competition? And the answer is it's the same guarantees you have today with all of your data, right? Most companies store their data in somebody's cloud. Very, very, very few companies. In fact, I can't think of a major company I've worked with yet that has all of their data stored, in on-prem sites. Uh, the same that you trust Amazon or Google or Azure or IBM or any of the cloud providers to secure your data, not read it and sell it, is the same you have to trust them with these models they're providing. If you can't trust Microsoft isn't stealing your data out of your SharePoint right now, then you can't trust they're stealing it. Not going to steal it with Copilot. If you can trust them, you should. And we may find out someday in 20 years that they were, we were being spied on all along. But at the end of the day, you can only do as much protection as you can do. Um, I think that the area that's most exciting and scary to me at the same time is the security side. And one thing I'm learning about is called adversarial learning. And so they have two AI systems, one that's call it the hacker system, and one that's the secure system. And the hacker system keeps trying to hack the secure system. The secure system keeps learning and gets better at blocking the hacking system, and the hacking system keeps learning and gets better at hacking. And so they are continuing to improve with speed. I think, again, unless you're a cutting edge security company and you know, this is what you do for a living, you should be leveraging the tools out there. There are plenty of tools that can sniff traffic and look for patterns that are potentially concerning, and then you can zoom in on those. But it's exciting to see the challenges, but it's also scary to see how quickly AI is being applied for nefarious approaches.
Yeah, you got it. You got it. And that's why it's at 18% now and probably going to be climbing for
Oh
sure.
yeah.
So there's a couple other things here we want to touch on at least briefly. Defining skilled AI talent, I guess it's only 12% now, but I think there's a good answer to that. And that is two things really. As number one, right? Folks like Dan and I, we have plenty of skilled AI talent, right? When you engage in a project with us, our talent comes in, builds it for you, and shows your staff also how to work with AIs. So that's both acquiring your talent there from a vendor like us and also teaching your staff through a project. And we find that, hey, listen, as long as you have some folks there, some developers there that are, in the know and that can do some of this stuff, that they very quickly pick it up. And then there's also the whole staffing aspect of things. Listen, if you can't find talent, enroll a firm again like Mapsys, Dan and I, to do that for you. We can find you as much talent or as little talent as you want. I was just talking this morning to a customer that was looking for a few UX UI designers, and probably a few of you are probably like, "Well, doesn't Mapsys doesn't do UX and UI?" And yes, we do, but our guys are very much engineers, and I think they're maybe not the most pretty UIs. But I don't want to rag at them. I am kidding a little bit, but yeah, so we can do it all, right? You can use a talent agency like us to go find some of that stuff. Thoughts, Dan?
Yeah, I always suggest if you're bringing on a new skill, start with a consultant. It's too easy to say, "Hey, I'm going to go hire someone who's smart and knows this field," and then you bring them on and you realize you got the wrong person. I think when you start with a consultant, it doesn't have to be full time, it can be part time. You learn a little bit yourself out of the gate. And so that way, when you're interviewing that AI czar or whatever role you're looking to fill, you have a little better knowledge yourself, and you also have someone there with a little bit of knowledge and experience who can help make sure you're actually asking good questions and vetting the candidate effectively. I've seen too many times from my agile days where somebody goes out and hires an agile expert, and and then I get called in 6 months later to fix the mess that they created. And I'm starting to see that with AI czars, right? Somebody was hired, and a year later they haven't done anything, and they just don't know what they're doing, and the company had no idea because the people who, the rest of the company didn't know much about AI. So start with a small consulting contract and learn a little bit, and then hire your lead, your czar, whatever you want to call them.
Oh, like it. Great. Well, I think the rest is probably doesn't really need to be talked about much. So, Dan,
Yep,
shall we go to the next slide?
I think so.
We should. I'm going to go ahead and go to the next slide, but I have a question here too. So before I kind
All
of
right.
elaborate on the next slide, I'm going to ask this. So, and I think this is kind of interesting, at the time point. So, how do I convince the rest of my organization we should be investing in AI now?
I love that question. I think the answer is to ask if they want to be Sears or Blockbuster, um, or if they want to be, Netflix or Amazon. And there's been plenty of times in our history, especially in the tech space, where new technology has come online, new approaches have come, and there's those who adapted fast, there's those who were somehow able to catch up, and there's those who, once they got behind, it just started a tailspin. And I think the internet revolution is a perfect, maybe not perfect, but it's a really good an analogy to what's happening with AI right now. Um, those companies that are embracing it now, yeah, you will choose some bad paths. Amazon made some mistakes, and they used to love to talk about them. Same goes for Netflix, things that they tried to roll out. I mean, Google did too. Everybody remembers Google Plus that tried to compete with Facebook for a hot minute. Um, but they also grew, and they also are the ones that were successful. And then, you get the Sears, they had the largest direct to consumer distribution center in the world. And it was many, many years before Amazon's got up to the scale that theirs used to be. But it was all catalog based. And when people stopped buying from a catalog and started buying online, instead of adapting and switching that amazing logistics system they had into an internet sales side, they just closed that part of the business. And, as we know, Amazon's one of the biggest companies in the world today because of it.
Hmm.
Same goes for Blockbuster. They had their shot at streaming, they had their shot at buying Netflix, and they wanted to focus on the in-store experience. And there's one left. You can still go to it out in Washington, but I don't think most of us want to be in that boat. So, um, I think you have to create a sense of urgency that if we don't get involved now, we're going to be playing catch up in a couple years. And if we don't get involved in a couple of years from now, we're probably going to be playing how do we, close up the company.
Dan, we could probably spend the rest of the webinar on just that one question, right? I mean, gosh, there's so much. I knew exactly what you're going to say when you started talking. I was like, I know where he's going. I've heard him do this a bunch of times. This is good. And I like that answer. It's a good one. The fear, uncertainty, doubt is it's a big motivator. I would just add real briefly that, I think you could do bottom up or top down in your organization. I have lots of anecdotal stories about how this works and how it could work. But real briefly, I would break off with a couple of your colleagues, sit in a room and say, where could we use AI? You don't even need to know what AI does. Just think it's some kind of magical unicorn out there that can solve a bunch of problems and just say, hey, where could we put AI that might benefit us and by a big dollar amount? And if it seems like you found a place, go talk to some more folks about it, some of the decision makers, and then go get help. We're help. If you don't like us, go to someone else that's going to help you understand what you can do with AI, and that can help you in your entire organization succeed. That's a
Yeah,
good one.
if you're truly invested, I suggest picking up Kotter's book on organizational change management. I apologize, the text will put you to sleep, but the content is really good. And one of the things that he starts with is no one person, even if you're CEO, can make major changes within an organization. You need a team. And so the first thing you do is you find like-minded individuals within your organization. You form a committee. And that committee then aligns on what's our goal, and then you can start to work as a group to make those impacts. So if you find, 4 or 5 other people in your organization that are also interested in AI and want to grow and, also want to make sure the organization continues to grow, you build a coalition, and that small team, can then see areas of the organization that you don't and can make impacts and has connections and can lead that change you're hoping to see.
That's awesome. I love it. I love it. All right. Well, you want to take us
All
through this
right.
last slide?
Yeah. So, what
Excuse me.
Well,
so
No,
what
go ahead.
challenge? Yeah, I'll let you save your voice. What challenges are you are currently impacting your organization's AI adoption? So, complexity of implementation. I think I'll let you start with that one,
Yeah,
AJ.
yeah, yeah. It can be very complex. So I'll
Hmm.
go back to the that prior example I gave you, right, with the data scientist and his two coworkers, right, building a whole system, et cetera, et cetera. Listen, they were starting, from a command line, sitting there on a Linux station or their Windows box, building tools. I was like, okay, so there's a lot of complexity there. So I'm coming at this listen, this is largely a solved problem now. There are plenty of platforms out there, whether it's from the big guys, Amazon, Google, our favorite IBM, Microsoft, that gives you a whole slew of tools to manage the complexity from if you want to build a model to building those models, then scoring those models, then life cycling those models and keeping multiple versions of those models in production and out of production and test and in dev. And you know where I'm going with this, right? I don't need to continue on with it, but that's the point, is I think that the complexity largely, well, of this stuff is taken care of. It's a solved problem. Just pick the right platform that's going to work for you. I promise you, if all you folks out there saw the demo from the IBM Watson X team, the last webinar, those guys built those demos in 20 minutes. If they didn't have those tools, it wouldn't have been 20 hours. Hopefully it wouldn't have been 20 days, but it might have been close. So that's a huge difference and certainly a competitive advantage. Dan?
I think this is the natural challenge everybody faces with a project, right? They want to boil the ocean and they struggle to see how there are thin slices that we can deliver quickly, an MVP or even a pre-MVP that's just a proof of concept. If your goal is to, completely reformat how you handle something, if you want to eliminate your 90% of your call center staff out of the gate, if your goal is to, um, increase our predictions and ordering of inventory, so that our prediction level goes up 90%. Those are great goals, and those can be end state goals, but those aren't what you want to start with. You want to start with, can we just use AI to predict our inventory needs over the next 6 months or 3 weeks or however long it takes us to order that inventory? And then we want to improve that model continuously. And then as it gets better, we start to use that to inform our decisions. And perhaps eventually we get to the time when it's making the decisions for us. Um, from the call center example, and that's a common one I actually have come across several times, is where companies go, the customer doesn't like talking to somebody in India or the Philippines because of the accent, and they still cost money, a lot of money. Can we do this cheaper with some AI that's better than what we have? And the answer I would say to that is maybe eventually, probably eventually, but out of the gate, look for the easy ones that AI can handle. Can we take a certain type of call off the plate? Password reset, for example. Can we just have AI handle password resets? Or can we just have AI handle, um, you know, balance inquiry or whatever it happens to be? And one thin slice. And once you get that slice, you look for the next one and the next one and the next one. But if you're trying to boil the ocean out of the gate, you're going to have the same problem you always do with an IT project.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, I like that, man. I like that a lot. So when I look down the list here, and I know we're getting a little, we're getting on in the webinar, right? So compatibility with legacy systems. When I see this, listen, we sell a lot of IBM, IBM S400. I know what legacy is, and so does Dan. It's all those RPG and COBOL. That's really legacy.
Yeah.
And then there's other legacy systems that you folks might be thinking of. But largely with the projects that we put together, that is not a problem whatsoever. There are we can take legacy systems and we can wrap things around it. We have a slew of developers to do all sorts of things like that. So does any other technology company out there that is worth their salt with AI or AI development. This shouldn't really be an issue. I can see why a lot of you are skeptical of it because those legacy systems are so powerful or central to your business. And listen, I guess the big message here is that yes, we can bring them all into the AI revolution. IBM I, AS400, RPG COBOL, it all plays with AI. I used to say, and you won't hear me say this again, I do a lot of Unix, a lot of IBM AIX. I used to say, there's no AI in AIX. Well, that's not true. There's a lot of AI in AIX, and you'll never hear me say that again. Some of my colleagues are probably rolling their eyes now. I was like, can't believe you ever said that. That was
So that
terrible. What do you
it was
think,
true at
Dan?
the time.
It's true. Yeah.
Yeah, but my dad used to be a professor. He's retired now, but he always used to say, over the years, I've never had to change the questions on my test, just the answers. Um, the world changes, and we're all trying to keep up. As far as compatibility with legacy systems, again, unless you've got, an old mainframe system or something really extreme, which just, we just don't see a lot of. Um, Most even, apps built in the 90s at this point had
Mm.
some form of APIs and even if they weren't true microservices, some form of microservices. And we can integrate with that. So hasn't
Yeah.
been a problem yet. Now if you happen to be the FAA running, I hear they still run air traffic control on mainframes, and I know some banks still to this day do. Okay, that may be a challenge, but again, not insurmountable.
Yeah. A customer came to me the other day with a question about Open VMS, and I was like, I haven't heard of Open VMS in many years, man. Is that even th still a thing? Apparently it is, but I'm sure we could figure out a way to bring that into the future too with AI. No problem. Okay, let's see here. Anything else we should talk about? Decisions require consensus from multiple stakeholders.
I mean, that's not
Um,
an AI problem. That's a project portfolio, program management challenge that we all encounter, regardless of whether it's an AI project or not. I can't think of the time I had a project before where one executive could just, wave his or her hand and that made all the decisions for us.
yeah, interesting. Yeah, yeah, I'd probably say the same thing. It's probably nothing to do with technology. It's really an organization problem. I do want to touch on the high costs here. So we touched up about on that a little bit a couple of questions ago, right? Like, what's it going to cost? Is it going to ROI? And I think listen, you got to understand if you're going to bring in a team of programmers, folks to help you design your AIs and build your AIs out, there's a cost to that, right? It's a team of folks. It's going to be a little bit of dollars, right? And then there's also the compute necessary to drive all that and the tooling costs. So it all sort of kind of adds up, but I'll tell you in general, if you have set the right expectations for ROI, the cost will not be an issue, right? We just recently we had a few customer calls. We got far enough with our projects, and they're like, "Hey DJ, how much is this going to cost?" And the answer is really is it depends. But also the other answer is I can give you sort of averages that I've seen. Is that okay? It could be more, it could be less. So the one is, bam, this is what it looks like. They said, all right, great, that's what we're planning on. No problem. Another customer came to me recently, said, I want to process, something like build 3 million documents from this repository. I can't say much more about it. But at any rate, the thought was 3 million. And how much you want to pay for this? Well, listen, the computing cost for just doing that, batching it, is going to be a lot. Is it going to ROI if we do this? Oh, I don't know. I don't think so. So that was the end of that conversation. But there's still things we may be able to do with them to help them. Again, the patent attorneys, right? This is another good one to take a look at. Probably not a good use for a custom programming team and these big tools and all that. It's just not the right fit for them. A better fit is probably getting to understand the productivity tools that are already available to them. However, you can't just sit down and say, here's my idea, write a whole patent for me, bye. No, it's more like we're going to work on this paragraph by paragraph together. That's how to use these productivity tools to their best. So, Dan, you talk about costs all the time. What do you think?
I mean, it's like investing for your retirement. Yeah, it costs some money now, but it's going to cost you more later. If you're not making the investment, if your company is completely running away from um, AI and just trying to, cut all costs right now because various economic factors, um, I think, you have a short future. It's saving pennies that later cost you dollars. Um, and to EJ's point, you don't need a custom application for everything. Sometimes it's as simple as, hey, let's just give some folks access to ChatGPT, spend an hour with them teaching them how to use it, and boom, they're off to the races. Other times, you can use tools that are pretty much out of the box, and you're in the several thousands of dollars range, not even tens of thousands. It doesn't have to be a multi-million dollar program. I think the secret is looking at what is it you're trying to accomplish and what kind of budget you have and finding the right solution that meets those needs.
Yeah, yeah. Good point. Good point. All right, let's see. There's one left here, right? The regulatory
Hmm.
compliance concerns. Dan, what do you think?
I think that the truth is, the U.S. is way behind on this one. I'm guessing most of our viewers today are U.S. based. Europe is a little bit ahead of us. The GDPR, with the
Mhm.
data stuff, has started to incorporate some AI rules. They've passed some AI legislation, which comes into effect later this year already. And so I think if U.S. based for the most part, regulation isn't there. And regardless of your politics and how you feel about the current administration, I think we can all agree that the current administration is not looking to implement a bunch of new regulations. So given that, I think there isn't a lot out there U.S. based to have to worry about. We still keep an eye on it, and we'll still be aware. Maybe something like similar to like the California Privacy Act passes and starts to regulate AI in the future. But at the moment, um, there just isn't a lot of regulations.
Yeah, yeah, good point. Very good point. I'll add on top of that, though, that there are plenty of tools. Again, we mostly use the IBM tools, the governance tools, or the Guardium suite from IBM to meet regulatory concerns for all your data, whether it's in AI or not. So that's kind of an easy way of finding the right tool set to help you meet those regulatory, concerns or goals, right? HIPAA or uh, PCI or whatever they may be, right? So that's how I view that question. But again, we could probably talk about this all day. The governance tools within the IBM suite is great. I need to be able to explain the answers that the AI have given. Let me give you one real quick segue. The very first webinar we did last year, I had a crazy question, and the question was how do you feel about AIs being used for college admissions? And I think I answered it okay at the time, but I was like, wow, that was an amazing question. I can't believe someone asked me that. But I think what I want to add on to that is that every time one of those decisions is made by AI, you need to explain that decision, whatever it is, good or bad. And you're going to take heat for no matter what comes out of it, and you better be sure that your model's performing the way you expect it to perform. So there's your regulatory and compliance.
Yeah, I think transparency is important, and there's some non-AI based rules. For instance, those who are familiar with red zoning in banks, where they called it red zoning or sort of redlining because they would draw red lines around neighborhoods they wouldn't make loans to, and those were primarily neighborhoods made up of African American people. Um, if your AI has learned that people in a certain zip code or certain geographical area are better or worse candidates for a loan, and you start using that data without knowing that the decision was made based on geography that aligns to certain racial uh, neighborhoods, then you're going to be in a lot of trouble with the regulators, and rightfully
Yeah.
so. So I think transparency and knowing what your data or how uh, the model is using the data and what data it's using is important. But um, at the end of the day, for better or worse, I haven't seen any enforcement around that yet.